please come to the stage. Madam Vice Chancellor, His Excellency Mr. JNU, please come to the stage. Professor Mazhar Asif.
Hari Om Agnirjyotirjyotiragni Swaha Surjo Jyotirjyoti Surjaha Swaha Agnirvarcho Jyotirvarchaha Swaha Jyoti Surjaha Surjo Jyoti Swaha Namo Gadebhyo Gada.
I request Professor Vasilios Siros to deliver the welcome address, please.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege and distinct honor to welcome you to the International Conference, The Great World in India, History, Culture and Trade from the Hellenistic Period to Modern Times. The focus of this conference will be on the various types of encounters between Greece and India in the period from the 4th century BCE to the 18th century CE. Indeed, these two civilizations influenced each other in direct or indirect ways and made a foundational contribution to world history. The salient aspect of the mandate of the Greek Chair is to promote the comparative study, examination of the Greek and Indian classics. This conference is being held at a very critical juncture, given that there is an increasing awareness of the affinities between the Indian and Greek civilizations. Both Greece and India possess a tremendous cultural capital and historic depth, and can play a pivotal role in fostering mutual understanding and the peaceful. The Greek Chair, my colleagues and I, aspire to be part of this unique process in the history of Greek-Indian relations. I'm confident that this academic event, this conference, and many more to come, will offer the opportunity for reflection, rumination on this historic moment, and the potential to strengthen the ties between two nations.
Request Professor Vasilios Toukousas to put some light on today's program as well as about the exhibition which is going to be inaugurated by the Honorable Minister.
The connection between our two countries, Greece and India, is much deeper and much more lasting through historical times and the presence of the Hellenic Institute of Byzantine and post-Byzantine studies of Venice. As in the West, an attempt was made to conform our common aspiration for open borders of science and culture with the important exhibition of Codex 5 manuscripts of Alexander the Great in the British Library, we launch now and in the West an attempt to reconnect us with the roots taken by our ancestors. Roots of cooperation, mutual understanding, respect for diversity, roots of spirit, interpretation and exciting. This conference will be the first step with return and will set new dynamics in a space of shared historical experiences.
Contemporary to Sanatani culture, we had more than 62 civilizations in the world. Two of them are Greek and Persian. And these three countries are considered to be the hub of culture, language, learning, and civilization. All three epics of the world are composed here in these three lands. The Shahnameh in Persian, Mahabharata in Sanskrit, and Iliad and Odyssey in Greek. All the three epics talks about our past, about our culture, about our struggle, about our civilization. There are a number of records in Sanskrit which tells us that we had once upon a time very important cultural, political and trade relation with the Greek. I, behalf of the school, request all of our research scholars to do research on the three epics. There must be a comparative studies of these three epics to bring a new light on our Indo-Greek relations.
It's really a great pleasure and honor for me to address this international conference on the Greek world and India, history, culture and trade from Hellenistic period to modern times. Our university, which I have the honor to represent today, the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, the largest university in our country in Greece. Greece and India represent two of the oldest written cultures in the world. The striking similarity between their ancient languages, Sanskrit, the language of classical literature, and ancient Greek, have inspired research into the context between the respective cultures and the subsequent establishment of the Indo-Greek states, in which the two cultures created a uniquely rich synthesis. During the Roman and Byzantine times, not only trade played an important role, but also diplomatic exchanges, contemporary with the longest epic poem written in Greek about the adventures of Greek god Dionysus in India. The influence of India towards the West was always felt and is most remarkable with the introduction of chess in India and Rumenica.
I request His Excellency Ambassador Yannis Alexis Japos.
It is indeed with great pleasure that I find myself here today at the International Conference on the Greek World and India. The historical, intellectual, and cultural contacts and exchanges between Indian and Greek scholars are old and have produced excellent results. Academics on both sides have worked diligently in order to produce interesting papers on various periods of time. Allow me, as a former Greek ambassador to India, to mention that I feel extremely proud that this Dimitris Galanos chair was created back in the year 2000 while I was here in India. It has been since a constant and important light, illuminating with its beam our common humanistic path and research.
It's indeed a privilege to be here. I'm sure if I speak anything on Greek history or culture, it will be like Suraj ko diya dikhana. So I would not dare to do that. One thing just I would like to tell when we talk about history or culture, every student of history in India or the archaeology read about Indo-Greeks. There are a lot of archaeological remains which are the material evidence of these exchanges are lying unexplored. Those which have been explored, they are still waiting for proper interpretation, study and analysis with an active chair like the one in JNU. I am sure the archaeological material which is excavated from different sites across the country will throw fresh light on our relations of India and Greece, or Greeks and Indians, and their exchanges in the past.
I'm very delighted to see now that we are paying attention to the medieval period. Of course, Alexander is more or less in the medieval period a kind of a myth or a king who sort of patronizes exchange. But the exchanges in the medieval times were very real. What we know in India today as Unani medicine did not come in ancient times. As a matter of fact, it went from ancient times, from India to Greece, and then it came back in the medieval times and is even now known as Unani medicine. Most of so-called medieval music from Persia, Arabia, which had a great impact in India from 13th century onwards, and changed the entire grammar of Indian music, not the music, the grammar, how you classify it, came from not only Persia, but Central Asian and other regions, but all this was really Greek. What is called maqam, a word you are perhaps very familiar with, or the scale of music used in the Gulf region and all that, is actually Greek. It is the Greek tetrachord which was defined in the ancient times and which traveled to India and transformed Indian grammar of music.
It is a special privilege for me to be here today on such an important, I would say, historical occasion. The International Conference on the Greek World in India, which was proposed by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Hellenic Republic, Mr. Nikos Dendias, while giving a speech in this very room last March during his official visit to New Delhi, is an event that has no precedent. For the first time, leading academic experts from India and Greece, as well as from other countries, are gathering in one venue and deliberating on the past, the present and the futures of the relationship between Greece and India. Here we have two distinct ecumenical civilizations that exist in parallel at two different points of the earth. I find it particularly amazing that now you, the leading experts, are trying here to explore and to establish how this interaction took place and how deep and strong this interaction has been. And this is something wonderful, not only for the sake of pure science and of abstract knowledge, but also because the nowadays holders, that is the people of these two ecumens, need to know their past is the forerunner of their present and of their future. In my appreciation to the JNU Honorable Madam Vice Chancellor for the support given to the Greek chair. We consider it a great privilege that such a chair exists in this historical university and are proud of this important landmark which constitutes a further upgrade for the work of the chair in the framework of our bilateral relations with India.
I'm very glad to be here with you today. India belongs to the sphere of myth in the era before Alexander's the Great campaign in Asia, with few Greek authors referring to the country in the context of the mythical tales about Dionysus or Hercules campaigns as their ultimate destination. Various kinds of information, to a certain degree mythical, are preserved in the first Greek testimonies about India, from Scylax to Cariada, Hecateus of Miletus, Herodotus, and Ctesias of Cnidus. More important information can be found in the authors described Alexander's campaign. This is Arrian, Curtius, Diodorus, Siculus, Plutarch, etc. Notwithstanding that most of them compiled their works 3 or 4 centuries after his death. Alexander was accompanied by a group of philosophers, geographers, explorers, etc. Alexander did not go further than Indus River, and its tributaries are descended towards the sea, the Indian Ocean. He refrained from crossing Ephesus and entered the heart of India, where the organized state around the Ganges River lay. Influence from the Greek presence in India is attested in architecture, urban planning, mining, astronomy, etc., where the Greco-Buddhist artistic style of Kandara was developed in sculpture and was present until the 8th century Common Era. The recent years, Greece-Indian relations have been traditionally at a very good level. This is based on a number of agreements that cover a wide range of fields with a view to promote bilateral cooperation. The Greek-Indian cultural and educational relations, in particular, have been based on a cultural agreement since 1961, implemented
Indo-Greek relationships. Mostly people look at time frames like as if no civilization existed before the Christ came to this earth. But here are some old ancient civilizations which were flourishing in a period which was before Christ. And that context needs to be set correctly. Somehow, if we look at the geographically on the land areas, we were connected with each other through Persia and beyond. And Greece, if you look at the geography, was never a country of the West actually. I'm making a scandalous statement, but I think someone needs to put that. So it was a bridge between the East, the Mediterranean and the West. National boundaries keep changing through the history, but the geography doesn't change. We as Indus Valley civilization, as ancient Indian civilization, were connected through geography, and that is why the Greek placement on the map and Indian placement on the map decides how civilizations are going to stay connected. And in that connection, both the sea and the land routes were available. And those connections established how the history will be written, how the exchanges will happen, and how we are going to influence each other. And I'm really not surprised when I think of Indo-Greeks, so-called the Bactrian Empire, which is placed right on the edge of where the India was meeting the other civilizations. So that was the landmass area which represented Bactrian Empire. And historically, as the records speak and records say, people tend to look at Alexander as one of the figures which seem to have connected the two countries or the two civilizations. But that is not correct. That is not right. The two civilizations were in touch with each other 200 plus years before Alexander. And 2 centuries before Alexander, we were in touch, and the details can be found all over and through various means. Would you imagine that Mahabharata in India, which has got more than 100,000 couplets and about 200,000 verses and more than 2.5 million words, mentions Yavana. In Mahabharata you find this word. The history, the way modern history is understood today, the modern history, I'll still call it modern because it's written by the people who colonized us. So I can also say colonized history. All our literature and some ancient books are lying with the British. As members of UNESCO, I think we all need to work together to retrieve and exchange our artifacts and books, because we are all signatory to UNESCO convention. And considering the portfolio I hold right now, is also speaking about UNESCO as 2 heritage countries possess longest surviving civilizations. We need to work very closely with each other. If we have somebody who's a Sanskrit scholar amongst us, I would say that the Sanskrit scholar obviously would only be reading the text, but we can work with somebody who's a Samved Pati, like the Acharya of Samved, The Acharya of Samved would be someone who understands the shlokas in a certain tone and in certain time. So that is what music is. How fast you speak or how slow you speak, and when you say a certain thing and certain intonations, which is Samved is the origin of that. Now Indian music starts to get its form from Samved, and then it starts to get codified. Similarly, the theatre starts to get codified with Natya Shastra, and Natya Shastra gets to be written by Abhinav Gupta and others who put treatise on that. It could be intangible common heritage from the music format, or it could be tangible heritage in form of, say, some forts or some art style like Indo-Greek, which is now a part found in Afghanistan, but Mathura school also, which is just a few hundred kilometers from Delhi. I would request my friends from or the academicians who are here, who have greater knowledge of the subject, try to study this and start identifying projects which we can do together, identifiable, and which we can send as common heritage, both intangible and tangible. So it could be the music format, the evolution of music on Indian side, and then how it got influenced by the Greek music. We can pick on Atharved, that how Ayurveda plus Rigveda became part of Atharved, and from where the Indian medicine system started. Indian medicine system, before that there is no medicine system. That medical system went out and came back in a certain format with alterations and changes. That could be sent as a common heritage. I think you need to identify some select project in a time-bound manner, and let's start working on those things. And send common inscriptions and common heritage. That is what World Heritage is, end of the day, all about. And we should use that as a bridge, as a link between the two countries to establish our ancient relationships, and also the political proximity, and also a narrative. We had some fantastic exchanges in the old times. We would be competing, but we're understanding also and working together as well. Language can only be a tool, not a job by itself. And that collaboration must happen between different tools which we need to use. And I'm just probably crossing my line if I say Professor Mazhar Asif. If you study the ancient Persian and the sounds of ancient Persian, not the way it's written, but the sounds it makes, is very similar to Sanskrit. And Greek, of course, so many common words, if I can say common words. Uniquely we are together, we are one. And uniquely the coins describe it all, because one side you will find Pali and the other side you will find Greek is what, and if you speak the two a bit slow, probably they sound the same. It's time to find common threads, and we should start working in a time-bound, detailed manner. So my request would be that all the scholars who are here to identify subjects and use that method to give a tangible answer that we can showcase to the world, to UNESCO, and use those platforms to speak about our narrative building also.
We have a video message from His Excellency Mr. Nikos Dendias, Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Greek-Indian contacts comprise the fields of art, letters, and science. Commercial bonds, mainly through maritime routes, led to the formation of vibrant Greek communities in Bengal. We're pleased that the experts in this conference are exploring these aspects of our history, from the Hellenistic period to modern times, with the aim to build on a relationship of the future, a relationship that aspires to become a strategic one, as Greece and India view things in a very similar way. A major highlight of this conference is the digital exhibition of a unique Byzantine manuscript with a large number of miniatures which depict the life of Alexander the Great. The manuscript is a rare gem from the collection of the Hellenic Institute of Byzantine and Post-Byzantine Studies. Its digital journey to India bears testimony to the efforts undertaken by our countries to honor and further explore their cultural bonds. We also feel very honored that there's a chair of Greek studies at the JNU. The latter will be reinforced with a visiting professor from Greece in the start of this academic semester. We, the younger generation of both Greeks and Indians, must always strive to live up to the level of our glorious past. But it is not enough to reflect on our past. We must walk in modern reality. We must contribute to the promotion of the culture of our countries and make this culture a lasting value.
I'm so happy that the Greek chair is organizing this Greek world in India, history and culture and trade, from the Hellenistic period to modern times. Organization, and JNU is the correct place. This is the university that has excellence with equity and equality, integrity with innovation and inclusion. Most of you know that we are top ranked even in the QS ratings. Just 2 weeks back, we jumped 220 ranks and crossed the 500 breach to 361, beating all the IITs, with just behind 2 IITs. And I'm so happy that we have 2 civilizations, I would say the greatest civilizations, one that influenced Western political thought, social thought. I learned from the sophists to Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, and others, which greatly influences the entire social sciences, humanities. And India, that is also a civilizational state. I come from the south of India, where we knew that a lot of Greek trade took place during the Sangam period. We also have comparisons between Pythagoras, Aryabhatta, and Bhaskara, and also, as Madam mentioned, Indo-Greek. I would also suggest something. I think the Greek and the Indian gods are the most colorful, most vibrant, most human. So I would say there would be excellent comparative studies between Krishna and Achilles. Why? Because both the heroes of their respective mythologies, Krishna and Achilles, were both killed by arrows piercing their heel, the only vulnerable part of their body. Another similarity is Indra and Zeus. Both Indra and Zeus are the king of the gods. You have Yama and Hades, who are the gods, lords of the death. They preside over the netherworld. And then I would also say between Sita and Persephone, because both of them are abducted and then they disappear into the earth. And Arjuna and Achilles for being the greatest, and finally Kamadeva and Cupid, the gods of love, and Mount Kailasha and Mount Olympus. So we have a lot of similarities, even I won't call them myths. They are historical narratives. Maybe the colonial world wants to call them myths because I think we engulf them too strongly. So I'm so happy here today that we have again the Greeks in India, and we are so happy to have you here, and Jawaharlal Nehru University is the place where you should be, because we meet tradition with modernity, continuity with change, realm with region, and myth with reality.
Excellency wants to present book to our Honorable Minister of State. So I request His Excellency Secretary General Professor Kyrisoulakis to please present the book to Honorable Minister.
Copy of what you'll see afterwards. This is the book which is called the manuscript Codex 5. This describes everything you'll see afterwards. Which is symbolic to strengthen our friendship.
Thank you, Excellency.
जनगण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तव शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तव जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Well, this is lovely. Look at it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Alexios III Komnenos the Great, son of Emperor Trebizond Basil the Great I, is crowned in Christ the God, faithful King and Emperor of all East in Trebizond. Shortly afterwards, he commissions a lavish manuscript of the most popular romance in Byzantium, the Alexander Romance, for his personal library. In a short while, the manuscript is copied, is illustrated with at least 250 miniatures narrating the life of the great Greek conqueror, and it is offered to its commissioner. In 1461, when Trebizond was occupied by the Ottomans, glosses in early Ottoman script are added in the margins of the pages so that the new owner can have access to the content. A few centuries later, following trials unknown to us, the manuscript travels, and for all we know, since the 19th century, it belonged to the Greek Brotherhood of Venice, where today it is displayed in its museum, fascinating every reader. The story of the romance starts about 1,700 years ago in July 356 BC. Olympias, wife of King Philip II, King of Macedonia, gets pregnant through the magic powers of Nectanebo, the last pharaoh of Egypt. One day when the position of the stars is favorable, she gives birth to Alexander, who is meant to be the great ruler of the Ecumeni, the entire inhabited earth. Legendary Bucephalus, who would accompany him through all of his military campaigns until his death.
There are many stories related to meetings of Alexander, the king of the kings, with the naked Sandus and philosophical discussions. And one of his commanders, Omnis Onesicratos, he was sent to bring an Indian ascetic, and he met Dandamis. Dandamis was the guru of the Indian ascetics, and they had the first comparative philosophy. That is a discussion which they are discussing about many philosophical topics, and they refer to Plato, to Pythagoras, to Diogenes, and to Indian philosophy, and they make the comparison. These two British historians, Tarn and Woodcock, they claimed that Ashoka, the great emperor of Mauryan Empire, he might have been half Greek, because a book by Alain Danielou was based on this topic, Siva and Dionysos. And he gave us also records about the Brahmanas and Sramanas, the different types of religions who existed in his time. But he does not mention Buddhists. That shows, according to my opinion, that Buddhism was not very much spread at that time. It was spread after Ashoka, that is the next generation.
Where have you lost the pace actually, especially in the contemporary times? Because the history says that, so much similarities.
They were defeated when they tried to come to East, they were defeated, and then Islam preserved I think they stopped the contact between Greece and India. I don't know now, I would like to hear about the Byzantine times, I don't know much about this. But I think there was an interruption during that time. Before it was a lot of contact through the trade.
Modern science and epistemology are attempting to solve the problems of human life, which are caused by temporality, decay, and the doom of historicity. On the other hand, a significant position of humanity.
The civilizations of Greece and India show a real completeness. their culture extends to all areas of spiritual activity and is rooted in both cases in a systematic metaphysics that lies at its heart and gives it meaning and pulse. In our presentation, we'll attempt to approach the notion of well-being in the two religious cultures as it is demonstrated in the two traditions based on their respective literature.
That the scholars have taken insight from Aristotle, Nicomachean ethics.
Yes, we accept, let's say, we begin from this notion of well-being and we go further, and well-being in Christian tradition means the union, the friendship with God.
All this is not the same. The Christian point of view, the Christian conception of human being, very close with the revelation. Point of the starting in the ancient Greek thought is human being. The point of starting from the Christian conception of the human reality is God.
I'll be focusing on Istanbul or Constantinople as the point of comparison. And I've just added a small note here on the front slide to give you an indication of what I'll be talking about. Period from the 4th to the 11th century. They shared no border, and so the contacts were due to individuals or very small groups who traveled between the two areas. Traditionally, our minds would immediately bring up the names of the two countries lying in between India and Constantinople, or the Byzantine Empire, or the East Roman Empire, these being the Persian Empire and later on the Islamic Caliphate.
Conquest of Egypt and then the Arab conquest, so until 619.
Which is connected with that formula. It actually says what type.
About Indian and Greek culture together. Such dialogues and such creative platforms are actually the key pillar to any two countries. Ganesh Vandana is something that is usually performed in the beginning of any cultural evening.
Sakhi
origin and early development of iconographic systems in different parts of the world. Some years ago, I authored a study on this particular statue that you see in front of you, which is a statue of a goddess by the name of Hariti. Hariti statues were usually placed in front of Buddhist monasteries, at the entrance to Buddhist monasteries in Gandhara and in the rest of the Mahayana world. So in many monastic establishments, whether in Odisha or in Bengal or in Andhra Pradesh or in Telangana on the southeast coast of India, all the way through up to Gandhara, you would normally have a Hariti statue at the entrance. Indeed, if you go to Nepal, to the Kathmandu Valley, even now, you will see that there are active shrines to Hariti near the stupa.
What is your opinion about the main ideas of this Hariti being assimilated or transformed or synchronized into this Buddhist art? What is your idea or perception about all these issues?
There are many Hariti images, as I was showing, which are even stone sculptures from Telangana all the way through to Mathura. There are examples in terracotta from Chandraketugarh and from Bangladesh which have been found. The cult is still active in Nepal, where she is still worshipped. So in mainland India it is there. She was so powerful and dominant a figure that Buddhism could not ignore her and she could not be left out of the Buddhist pantheon. And so the Buddhist pantheon had to adopt her because she was so popular.
That has to do with how Philip was assassinated during his entrance to the, as he was coming from the palace to the theater during the celebration of his daughter Cleopatra marriage. He was assassinated by Pausanias. He was stamped by him, and after this, very quickly, his tomb in the same place was erected. The tomb has been extremely excavated by Professor Andronikos in the 70s, and nowadays everybody can see the findings of this tomb, including, of course, the golden larnax and all the equipment of Philip.
Theme of their discussion.
And this is why he wanted something to show them and learn about them.
Where the Poruses belong. Nowadays
of real
to identify that place.
100% realities.
My paper focuses on a period which is key to understand the relation between India and the Greek world.
It was never as dominant as cremation was.
He's telling more about Greece and Neoplatonism at his time in this passage that he...
And on a certain day, Alexander visits that Brahmin.
Practices in India with the Brahmins.
Marks the beginning of the reference to the expenses required for the transport first through the desert, financial capacity of the merchant towards the end of the trip.
The structure first the problem in the archaeological protection and religious use, which has to do with the concept of heterotopia. It is a concept of Michel Foucault. And then the suggested solution has to do with the living heritage approach. I'm one of the internationally that are promoting this approach internationally, but also in India.
It is accepted in Buddhism as one of the central ideas. According to it, our own suffering is due to our former sin and this or previous life, just as one's well-being is due to one's former goodness. The doctrine of karma denotes both the original moral act and its power for subsequent reward or punishment. It perceives past, present and future life of a being in a sequence and continuity associated with each other through the karma, which transmigrates from one to another being without the existence of a permanent entity, that is soul.
There are three well-known sources that provide in tandem with other sources. I believe we will be able to present a somewhat satisfactory outline of Greco-Bactrian and Indo-Greek history.
a more contemporary aspect to the problematic of interaction between Greece and India. We have seen throughout these, rather say that the book probably dialogues.
As we know, Ketos, they are hybrid mythical creatures from Greek culture. Similar to that are Makars, Attic people.
Now it's about time we move into early modern times. I will speak about Mughal India. And as you understand, and since we speak about early modern times, a bit more precise and more illuminating with certain aspects.
So let's invite now Professor Vinay Kumar from the Department of Ancient History, Culture and Archaeology from the Banaras Hindu University.
In this present paper of mine, an attempt has been made to find out how this particular imagery was transmitted from Roman Empire to the Gandhar art during the Kushan period, and how dynastic images are depicted on the Gandhar relief panels. This particular paper also tries to explain in brief about the dynasties' multiple identities and association in order to understand how and why the god found a special place in Indian culture.
We are reconstructing the Jammu and Kashmir history. I'm talking about the ancient period through the materials or the archaeological sources or the literary sources mentioned about the Greeks in this area. This is somehow it is the micro level or the micro history, construction of the micro history. On the other side, we can say that what are the influence of Greek culture in ancient Jammu and Kashmir?
For the limits of this area.
We have to know about the geographical area.
In the ancient time, was Kashmir?
Yes, sir, it was a part of India, sir.
Historical contextualization, and then of course this is also the beginning of the dialogue. So we're basically we can understand the situation of this very rich and diverse kingdom.
One Belt, One Road initiative by Chinese government, which was initiated in 2013, again to revive the old Silk Road. But Silk Road is a new term which was given by a German geographer in 1870. So we called it in the writings the Silk Road, Silk Road. Silk Road is part of that Hellenistic heritage, not the vice versa. So we have to organize the dedicated, designated project on heritage of Hellenistic period by combining efforts of India and the Greece.
It's an undoubted assertion. It's a fact of the matter that Greece at one end and India at the other, they constitute the pillars on which world civilization actually developed. So they are the roots of that very great tree which today has its branches all over the globe.
What else we can call if not Silk Road?
Silk Road, Silk Route. People are not aware, students are not aware about the Hellenistic or true meaning of the Hellenism or Hellenistic in the context of India, Greece or in the context of world history.
जब हम शुरू करते हैं थोड़ा सा तो अपना थोड़ी कारीगरी थोड़ी सा पारंपरिक कथक हम दिखाते हैं। मुझे लगा कि स्टूडेंट्स होंगे सब होंगे तो हमने थोड़ा सा सूफी स्टाइल में इसको बनाने की कोशिश करी है। टेक्निकल लोगों के लिए टेक्निकल बात यह है कि ये 9 मात्रा की चीज़ें हम करेंगे राग ताल में, लेकिन हम एक छोटी सी सूफी बंदिश हमने ली है, उसके साथ हमने मैलगेट किया है इसको।
चतुर श्रृंगार पिरोई हार
We offer 3 scholarships. The JNU student who is serious about the journalist, media studies, a big project about the relation between the Greek civilization and the Indian civilization. These two civilizations, very, very old, very important for all the world, not only for the Indians and the Greeks.
Friends, we've changed a number of great ideas and I hope we can work together. The chair is open. We're always welcome people to visit our center, the library. Hopefully we have a collection next year. And Mr. Haber and myself, we're always happy to receive feedback, proposals, ideas, suggestions. Thank you very much.
We know all this, that there was a lot of cultural interactions amongst, not only by the political causes but by the interaction of the common people so there was a new type of culture which emerged. I am very grateful to all of you to be here and to give this opportunity to all of us to hear all of you, and the continuation of this conference is till September next year. We will be sitting again in Venice, Hellenic Institute of Byzantine and Post-Byzantine Studies.
Bye.